The reason why we wanted to start off with Trend Micro is that cloud and application security in a Kubernetes container world where you've got new threat vectors, we wanted to start with Chuck so he can explain to you how Trend Micro works with all of the major cloud providers and ensures that whether or not you maintain an on-prem environment, whether or not you're moving just to one public cloud provider in a hybrid cloud architecture, whether or not you're further, quote unquote, complicating that by going to a multi-cloud environment where you still have multiple public cloud providers in combination with on-premise, which increases the complexity of your environment theoretically, but in a real sense, it also exposes you to more vulnerabilities. That's where Trend Micro can come into play because they can help provide that single pane of glass, that secure infrastructure or solution that ensures that whatever you decide to do around cloud providers and Kubernetes, they can make sure it's secure. So Chuck, with that as a starting point, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ron, for that great kickoff and introduction, and Angel Beat as well. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this today, to present to you this morning and represent Trend Micro. So excited to be here and kind of get the Kickstarter thing started this morning for a great event. Spent some time yesterday evening looking over the great speakers from the other organizations and content to kick off your day of learning. And that's my objective today, is basically get you engrossed in topics that we're talking about today: Kubernetes, container-based application development, cloud-native technologies, and introduce you to concepts if you're not already used to that in the world of application security, or AppSec. And some terminology, everybody is kind of used to talking about DevOps in general, but the new terminology that you hear a lot of is called DevSecOps, where we're trying to sandwich security right in line with that DevOps mantra of speed of service, velocity, code once, run anywhere, and inject ourselves in automation. So, and how we can complement you with tools with these security concepts like security as code, helping you shift left and improve your overall security posturing and approach, and complement tools you're already using. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I've got my, I promise this is not all PowerPoint. I have an interactive here to showing how these solutions work and how you can, like Ron said, to inject our security libraries in what you're doing today in your app stack. So pretty cool stuff. We'll go ahead and get started. So to kind of set the stage here, we'll go ahead and advance slide. What we've seen, or what I've seen when I work with customers, I'm a solutions architect at Trend Micro, so I work with customers every day that are starting to, either they're in their early on in their cloud migration strategy, they're starting to move to cloud native, or folks are going straight to the cloud and doing cloud native technologies, with container-based application development. So with that exploding set of new services that the cloud service providers are putting out, we're trying to, I think security is always trying to stay ahead of the curve, right? And also what we've seen in the DevSecOps movement is now we've got multiple teams making infrastructure decisions and security decisions. That tended to be when I worked in SRE as for a site reliability manager, it tended to lean more on the ops side. Security, always tend to be an ops problem, right? The code has been pushed, the application is out there, the auditors come in, run sweeps, run, their checklists and whatnot. And, based on the result set, that becomes an operational problem. What we're seeing is now that everything is shifting left in the industry, is that developers are involved and they are making those decisions, provisioning infrastructure, provisioning Kubernetes clusters, building containers and pushing those to container application registries. They're doing all that, and they may not even leave their ID environment where they're comfortable, right? They're not even interacting with the cloud service provider console. So we're recognizing that, and with the solution we're going to show today. And DevOps is leading the charge, right? Cloud technologies, like Ron was saying, has been the most disruptive technology and brilliant technology, starting in the last 10 years or so. And DevOps is leading the charge of increasing velocity in how we deliver our applications to consumers. Used to be, you get maybe one major release a year, maybe 2 builds a year. Now folks are having multiple builds of that application today. splitting up that monolithic application, right, into that microservices architecture using tooling like Kubernetes and container-based application development. That way they can, have that infinite loop, right, with DevOps, where, based on customer feedback, we're able to get those changes introduced to our software quicker than later. And moving into the cloud, obviously we have demanding compliance requirements. A lot of times when companies first start up, and they're building everything out in cloud native, they may not be under those regulations yet, but as they grow in size, start becoming merchants or taking payments, they may be under compliance needs for like PCI, start dealing with the medical industry, HIPAA comes in play, or CIS. A lot of times best practices is trying to get CIS hardening in place. So those are things that you probably are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And I definitely, from the engineering perspective, trying to accomplish that, we've got a lot of vendors out there that offer security tools, not only from from the cloud service providers, but other third parties as well, including Trend Micro. So a lot of times I would run into this personally to give personal insight. Working in SRE is like you have a changing of the guard, typical IT stuff. Someone comes in saying, hey, this is how I did things in my last job. We're going to use this tool. So pretty much before you know it, you've got a lot of different monitoring tools, pretty much kind of doing the same things. Like, who do you trust, right? So you're looking, one particular monitoring application for security is telling you this versus the other, who's the person you need to listen to. So we recognize that. So in building a platform around that, we want to make sure that you have one consolidated platform for cloud builders to get all the information you need there. So kind of setting the stage, that's the perfect storm. And the solution we have from a Trend Micro perspective is Trend Micro Cloud One. So this is a fully integrated security services platform for cloud builders. And you see there the proverbial blue cloud in the middle. Anybody that's given a cloud talk, that's that's the infographic you normally see, right? What we're doing is we're splitting up, our technology across different cloud services. And what we're going to talk about today is on the shift left side. So you see that application security and container security. That's our focal point for today's seminar. And you see right there in the middle that this solution is built for multi-cloud, right? So all the major players are represented there. And as you move around the spectrum of cloud, where folks may be just starting out or doing cloud migration, lift and shift, is we have capabilities in this single service platform to monitor those workloads if they're physical, in your wiring closets, in your data center, if they're virtual VMs, independent of what cloud provider. You actually have hooks directly into AWS, Google, and Microsoft Azure. So you have one pane of glass and VMware to be able to see where your workloads are and how they're protected with Trend Micro. Against 7 different modules to protect those instances. And then as folks move through their adoption process, I see personally when I talk to customers, is customers are trying to create what's called a cloud operational excellence program, right? Where basically, hey, we're here in the cloud, we've lifted and shifted, we're starting to use cloud native, or we're already there. We want to make sure from an account perspective that we're doing everything to a well-architected framework, right? That we're doing everything for best practices, for checking the box, for you to see here, for assurance and governance, and against these consortiums for PCI, NIST, HIPAA, like I was saying before. So all these are wrapped up in our suite for Cloud One. We're going to focus on cloud native today, which is this solution is security as code, to basically go as far left as possible, a few lines of code to integrate your application to report to your console. And then that application, it can live inside a container instance. It can be also, this works with serverless for Lambda today. So if you got an API gateway that's exposed and you want to protect your Lambda functions, it can use that. You can use it there as well. So let's go ahead and take a quick look here. So we've mentioned about flexibility. Like I said, major cloud providers are all supported. Any vintage of application that you're using, from monolithic, if you've got 3-tier architecture, web tier, app tier, database tier, this solution will work with that. If you're moving into containers and serverless, we're more concerned about the app stack that you're developing in and the supported language to include our security libraries in which you're already doing. And we see here talking about what that platform support, supporting both Windows and Linux OSs, and then in our app stack with those languages provided here. We'll get into some details here. So with cloud native applications, right? This is probably familiar to a lot of folks on the phone. I kind of advance the slide here. This is the normal pipeline that you would probably see in most operations. You've got a suite of developers that are using, Visual Studio Code or Eclipse or, insert ID of choice. They're pushing code multiple times today to a code repository, GitHub, GitLab, etc., Atlassian, Bitbucket, for example. And the end result of that is basically an artifact, that container image, right? We're basically trying to, that release of code, we want to wrap that up inside a container image and publish that or push that to our container registry. And then that's going to be consumed by Kubernetes, right? Kubernetes is that orchestration piece where it's going to go in and it needs to be fed by container images. It's going to go ahead and pull that container image in, assign it to a worker node or pod to be consumed by your customers. And that's what we're seeing here on the cloud side. So what we've noticed with that methodology, whoops, I've advanced too fast there, got a little ahead of myself. What we've noticed at Trend Micro, and I notice this on a day-to-day basis, is in the DevOps space, the operational challenges is there's that misnomer out there that security, probably seen some memes out there, puts the no in innovation, right? I think there's that resistance saying, okay, DevOps are about, meeting the demands for our customers, pushing rapid changes in succession, making improvements to our app, continuous improvement, right? So we wanted to develop a solution to shake that misnomer, right? To be able to interact with processes that DevOps folks are interacting on a day-to-day basis, like their CI/CD pipeline and automation, right? Basically doing things in a manual fashion is a no-no in that DevOps world. So this solution works with that at the code level. And then, like I said before, we realize that there's a lot of tools out there, so we want to have a concise platform, so you're not having alert fatigue, looking at different locations to get alerts. We also recognize in this space there's a heavy use of Linux, right? A lot of the containers for open source development are Linux based, and also what's coming into rise is even distroless containers. So that's even to reduce your attack surface, where we're not even bothering on using a base Ubuntu image for our container image. We may be just using a distroless image and actually injecting our code that way, and that's definitely coming on the rise. So those are things with operational challenges for the solution to work. And where we see vulnerability, I guess kind of choke points when I talk to customers, is where vulnerabilities, potential malware, where that kind of can end up in your code. So we're all human beings, right? Starting about shifting left is when we're doing our commits. The beauty of open source code is you can go out to GitHub, there's code readily available that someone else has written. You can make modifications to that. And then the human element, you're actually writing your own code as well. And by doing that, you may be introducing vulnerabilities in open source code without you knowing about it, right? Now it's checked into your source repository through your automation pipeline, and that image is built. Those same vulnerabilities are carried in to your container registry. And then once it's served up in Kubernetes, it's in runtime, and now those third-party application vulnerabilities, open source code vulnerabilities are exposed to the public, and certain types of things like a SQL injection based attack, a particular a malicious actor can act upon that, right? So the idea with this is trying to shift left as much as possible. See here on the right, part of our, it's not really covered today, but we actually in our Cloud One suite can protect your S3 buckets as well. So when you talk about the serverless construct, a lot of people go right to Lambda. I myself think of that cloud on the right there is everything in the decompartmentalized app development space or modern application development, containers, serverless, and cloud-based file storage like S3. So we can protect you there as well. And the solution we're going to talk about and showcase in an interactive is going to be Cloud One application security. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and advance some part of the slide there, is we are specifically looking at your app stack, okay? So this is security as code on how this works. Depending on, if you're a Node shop, if you're a Java shop, how we inject our security libraries, you get them from us. So in Java, it's going to be a jar file that you're going to include in your source code repository. You're going to create a set of environment variables in your container. At runtime, you can even do it in your Docker file if you choose to do so, to basically call home to your cloud console. So that application has shields up. It's got that security wrapper around your source code. And if you publish that container up to Kubernetes and all the three major cloud providers, or maybe using something like ECS or Fargate or Azure Container Instances, for example, to say I want to throw the container up there. The cloud service provider, you deal with the infrastructure, I'm just pushing the image. That's where it doesn't really matter where that container ends up. You're providing that runtime level protection. And you can also leverage your CI/CD testing to say, hey, when our developers check in code, we want to make sure that security library is injected there. And if it's not, you can go ahead and do that. So in this construct, we're doing at the application stack level. What we can protect you from, and you'll see that today, is think of OWASP top 10. So you might want to write that down. It's OWASP. So things like SQL injection attacks, remote command execution, like shell shock attempts, trying to get an elevation of privilege attack on a particular container, trying to access illegal file access areas, protected areas of the container image, like if you're running, an operating system based, like for Ubuntu, for example, an image. Since we're an AV company as well, you can use our anti-malware scanner. So if someone's trying to send a malicious payload, like a form field on your site, upload a potential piece of malware, that's included in our security libraries as well. URL redirects as well. And like I said, minimal impact on performance. That's the goal here. And implementing literally with 2 lines of code. Importing our security library for like Node, I'll throw another example out there. You're just doing npm and importing our security package when in your Docker file, and then stitching another line of code in there to call home to your SaaS console. And because we're integrating with security as code construct, we're providing that visibility down to the line of code. So when a malicious actor tries to exploit something, you get that real-time notification with your application that you'll see. And then also you get that AppSec trace information, right? That's going to show this particular file was hit. This is the payload that was sent. So great information that you get. So like I said, this is built for definitely security container-based workloads, but you also can protect your Lambda functions and published APIs if you've got like an API gateway, for example. The other piece of the puzzle, I like to show both of these solutions in the Cloud One, is container image security. Wrote an article not too long about this, about peanut butter and jelly. These 2 solutions are designed to work together to give you that full total coverage. So for best practices capabilities, you want to go ahead and do application security at its core and on every application that you build. If it's a container-based application, you can also integrate in CI/CD and call out via API. And this solution actually runs in Kubernetes. You actually deploy this with a Helm chart, and you can basically do a pre-scan. So before this image ends up in your production registry, you can run a pre-scan. It will basically peel back the onion, all the layers of that container, looking for vulnerabilities, looking for malware, looking for secrets, like maybe someone's put a private key PEM file in there, or maybe they've got AWS secret access keys in there. Those are no-nos. Don't do things like that. And then also compliance standards. So the idea behind this is to provide pipeline scanning as well to integrate with Azure DevOps, for example, or the AWS code build, code commit tools, or if you're Jenkins has a great following out there. That's the example I have here today, where you want to use that pipeline script and say, hey, this container that just got built, I actually added application security at its core, so I feel good about that. But I want to go ahead and take a second look at this and scan the actual image itself. That's how these 2 solutions work together. And this is fully automated. The reason behind all this is we want to implement security as code. This is allowing DevOps team and Sec to be right in the middle there to build security into their build pipelines, because we know they're releasing continuously and frequently. And a couple things we actually have an automation center on our site at Trend Micro, where customers can get sample code and scripts to get started. Obviously, you can work with an engineer like myself if you're interested, but we've got a lot of knowledge base out there in our automation center. So speaking of that, where do I go from here? I'm going to go into the interactive piece here in just a few moments. But if you're interested, bookmark this site. You can go to cloud1trendmicro.com, and you can sign up for a free trial. Once you do that, you'll have, like you saw the blue cloud there, you'll have access to all those feature sets. But for the focus of today, a good place to start would probably start in the application and container security for the audience today. So with that, I'll go ahead and get out of presentation mode, and we'll go ahead and minimize my slide deck here. And what I've got running on here on my local system is a couple of vulnerable applications. These are container-based applications. One's in Java, one's written in Node. Okay, they're running locally on my system. Anybody can try this out. That's what I invite you to do. Is a lot of times when I work with customers, it's like they're a little adverse. Like, okay, yeah, I do have to get a change request, even if I want to try this out on some of my dev or test-based containers. There's a lot of resources out there. You can go out to GitHub and just search for vulnerable web applications. We use them at Trend Micro for training folks, but one that I'm going to show today is called the MoneyX application. You can find that in GitHub, where it's basically to simulate like a PayPal or Venmo, online banking type account. And the other one is a juice shop application that is used for training developers. And that one is node-based. It's more like to simulate like a smoothie shop or a Starbucks or something like that, to kind of give some kind of like a real-world example. To start off with the console, application security. This is part of the Cloud One suite. You have that subscription service. You log in, and in here you can see right on the left-hand side. These are groups. I kind of proverbially call them buckets, right? But this is where you're going to set up your application group. So I have mine subdivided by app stack. So you can see I've got Java, Node, for example, PHP, Python. You saw those supported languages there. So I see customers, they'll do this. They'll go ahead and do it by language type. You can do it by, we talk about multi-cloud. So you could have like an AWS bucket or an Azure bucket or GCP, for example. Or you can do it by your platform, like dev, test, and production. Really doesn't matter, but it's totally up to you. But when you create a new group, as you can see here, I've got a test app group I just created here before the call. And when you create a new group, that's what you get here is those set of API keys. So you're going to use those and instantiate those with environment variables. Like you can do that inside the Docker file, like I was saying, or like I use Azure DevOps quite a bit. Let's throw something out there where maybe I've got those environment variables stored in a key vault, right, as secrets. And you can pull those in when you launch that container at runtime and saying, hey, I want to go ahead when this container launches and instantiate those environment variables, for example. So that's where you can go ahead and that's how you get the solution dialed in. Now from a code level, let me go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. And once you do that, you get this indicator here. So you see the green, it's kind of traffic light. If you get a green light, that means that the application is talking. The security libraries are polling in real time. So when you actually have an attack take place, and you actually can see the requests as well. So everything's okay here, but you actually can, in the graph up above, you get your real-time requests, like who's actually seeing the peaks and valleys here when they're actually requesting the application when end users are using it. And then the bar graphs actually show those OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities that we can protect you from. So like malicious payload, SQL injection, open redirect. I got a few samples here. We'll actually do one here in real time. So what will happen is when we simulate an attack, this will go to red, right? And we have notifications integration set up. I'll cover that. This will go to red, and then you'll get that real-time feedback if you're subscribing, to like Slack or maybe an SNS topic, for example, creating a Jira ticket. We have PagerDuty integration as well. I used to use that because I was in the overnight monitoring shift, so get rattled out of bed. So you'll get those notifications in real time, so you can take a look and take action there. And then over time, after an hour, if the application is no longer under attack, it'll gradually slide back to green. So think green, yellow, red, right? So in that instance, we'll go ahead and simulate something here. So in that MoneyX application, this is running on my local system. So let's just take a look at this. This is a Java-based application. This is my Docker file, right? In here, I'm adding one-liner. I'm actually pulling in the application security jar file, right, and adding that to my code and then injecting that into the container image. So that's used with the other jar files that I'm using for my application. That's it as far as adding the security library. Your mileage may vary depending on what language stack. Like I said, Node, you're going to run an NPM package. For Python, you go into your requirements text file and require our security library package. So it's basically adding that one line of code. And then now your security libraries are injected, and then adding those environmental API access keys for reporting purposes. So this container is started up. Let's go ahead and interact with this application. We'll go ahead and go to the payment section here. Let's go to receive payments. And under receive payments, you see here like, okay, I don't have any access to receive payments, but what if I want to try and see if this is vulnerable to a SQL injection based attack? So what I can do here is add a SQL injection based attack. So if I do or equals 1 equal 1, we see I get real-time feedback. Now this message is totally customizable. You can see here this request has been blocked by Trend Micro Application Security. Please leave immediately. I added that. You can simply just have a 403 if you want to and have that record, and that's done in our policy here. So we can see here that now that bubble has changed. It's no longer green. It's changed to red here. So we have one group under attack, our Java test application. And look, it's like the SQL injection here, bar graph just went up, right? So we've got now 4, we could sort by there, even by time if you want to. So let's go down to the list format. We can see that just came in here just a minute ago. Let's go to SQL Injection and see what we're seeing here. So we can see that was blocked. Since I'm running this locally on my system, just getting my local attacker IP address, the basic ports and protocol stuff where it came in on. And then you can see the path, the file that was hit, the actual request. You can see the SQL injection request I tried to throw at the application. And then with the SQL injection details, I'm seeing which query it was hitting to run. Obviously, our security library stepped in and prevented that from actually executing for the query, but you can see here where that vulnerable query is in here, and then the triggered policy details. So pretty cool that you have all that at your disposal. Giving you that information for your developers, and then with integrations here on the left, like this would be going. My Slack's pretty noisy, so I have it quieted down right now. But you can actually add integrations directly here in the console to, like I said, to PagerDuty. To New Relic Insights, if you're using that tooling for providing application performance and instrumentation, that's where you can take a look at that as well. And then Amazon SNS, maybe subscribe to a topic, for example. So another one I like to show real quick with this Java-based application is a IDS Based Attack. So in our policies, let's take a quick look here. We looked at our group settings. This is where you can switch these on and off. Most customers, when I work with them, are going to put this in report format. So you basically trying out the application. What do we not know? Like, this is the unknown. Are we vulnerable to SQL injections, malicious payloads, all these OWASP top 10 type stuff? And you can go into these categories and actually change your policy configurations for different types of SQL injection. Yeah, I've got the always true one selected today. That's the one I tried to use. But for like malicious payload that we're going to show here in just a second, this is using our 0-day initiative here at Trend for IDS-based attacks, looking for vulnerabilities. I'll pick on Apache for a second. Apache struts on there. If there's an associated CVE on that, and maybe you haven't patched that container yet, you can go ahead and turn these IDS-based rules on there to mitigate someone trying to exploit that inside your running container image. So pretty cool. This is taking part of our 0-day initiative here at Trend. When we find vulnerabilities, we put this into the product at your disposal. So one thing I'm going to go ahead and try here on this container image, you can see I've done it here before the call, is basically simulating a remote command execution malicious payload attack, trying to do a shell shock based attempt. So if I go ahead, this is a malicious curl. If I go ahead and run this, okay, I get that same feedback page. Obviously, it's showing me an encoded format here, right? That HTML page, that block page. But now we see that's blocked in real time if someone was trying to actually do a remote command execution. If I go back to my page here, you see here that now that has advanced, and that just came in for a malicious payload. We see that SQL injection I just did. We've got that malicious payload as well. Same information, just changes here. Is that we've got the triggered rule in our IDS suite that I just showcased for you all. The associated CV article with that rule set, and then here's that malicious payload. This shows exactly what I ran in the browser there. So all that information is available for you, part of application security. The last thing in talking with container security is when we talk about shifting left is using what's called our container security product, our container image scanner, right? So we're using that product. I do have a Jenkins pipeline set up. Looks like I timed out. Password's got to love them, right? So we'll go ahead and, if I can type today, my son types better than me, and he's 8. So let's go ahead and do that and log into Jenkins. And this is the example pipeline that I have running in Jenkins. This will work with whatever CI/CD you're using, since this is API driven. So what you can do is where folks will get started is go out to our GitHub repository at Trend Micro. And this is a Kubernetes-based solution. So this will allow you to deploy our image-based scanner in Kubernetes. If you're already running Kubernetes today, you just pick a new namespace to deploy into. It's basically a one-liner with a Helm chart. You run a Helm install. Basically, you have to have Helm installed, kubectl, those software tools to deploy or use Helm. You want to have with the overrides file here. This is where you're going to put in your trial license code from us. So it's really easy. Once you sign up for your free trial, you'll get a license code for this, and you can run that one-liner, inject the Helm chart into Kubernetes. A lot of times, customers will go ahead and provision a quick Kubernetes EKS AKS cluster out of the box to try this out, and then point their pipeline to the image-based scanner. So that's what you're doing here with the image-based scanner, is, oh, I went jump tabs there, is when that image is built, right? So I did a commit a few days ago, checked out source from source code, built a container, right? I've got that artifact, and I'm pushing it into the container image security scanner, basically to take a look at that, bust open the container, look for vulnerabilities, look for malware, etc. Based on the results that this is totally customizable by you. You can say, obviously I found a piece of malware in here. And if you want to go even further with the vulnerabilities threshold, if you're like saying, hey, if it's 5 or less criticals, that's totally up to you. Go ahead and release. Or maybe you want zeros here, but mediums I'm okay with. You can customize on what you want for a go, no-go situation to your production registry. That's the idea behind this, is to run that pre-registry scan to look at that container image and get that as secure as possible before it ends up in your production registry. And that's how you can use our solution with container image security. The console, it actually has all these consoles you can flip in with the solution. Looks like I've logged out of that as well. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and grab that real quick. I think I got 5 minutes of talking time, so we'll just take a look at that real quick. We'll be respectful of everybody's time. I've got that here in my vault. So let's go ahead and grab those creds real quick. So I apologize for that. Passwords, gotta love them, right? Doing security, we make sure we're timing you out. So here's the console. When you deploy the solution, you're gonna, in Kubernetes, this is what it looks like. You log into the dashboard. You can easily add your container registries here. I've got Azure Container Registry added to my solution, but you can go ahead and hit create, add your container registry. You can see here, you can pick by type. We've got all the major cloud provider registries supported. You can easily add them, ECR, or Google Cloud Registry, or in generic, you can add any Docker 2.0 API compatible registry, because this is API driven, right? And once you do that, you can scan the registry once it's created, perform periodic scans. You can even have customizability on filters. Like, I've got some playground images in here with Docker tags. I don't want to scan these guys, but I want to, scan these particular tags, or I just want to scan everything in the registry. Once you do that, you'll start getting this populated here. So obviously what we're looking for is malware, since we are, traditionally an AV company, but we also do content findings. Those are, like I mentioned before in my summary, or teeing up the conversation, private key PEM files, AWS secrets, Google Cloud secrets. You can go ahead and add YARA rules. It's Y-A-R-A, so you can go ahead and Google that. It's very JSON-like. You can add your own rule sets. You can customize your own rule sets in this solution. So, if you've got things that developers are putting inside that container image you don't want, you can scan for that with our content rules section to give some customizability there. Once you start scanning, this is an example here. These are images that are going through my pipeline. I've got one pipeline with Azure DevOps, and then one that's going through Jenkins that you saw today. But let's just pick one out of the image registry here. Looks like we've got a malware associated with that. Just to kind of give you a visual what's going on here. It's basically taking apart, you see the run and add lines like we were showing you before with the AppSec side. We've got a run line in here, right, that's going out. This is pretty common. I'm going out running a wget or maybe a curl, pulling in some files from some third-party repository somewhere. Maybe if I'm not checking for malware on that, you can use our malware engine and check with that with our container image security. And then you saw that in the pipeline. You can fail that particular build. I don't want that in production if it's got any malware in there. I need to be notified on that, to show that as an example there. You can do webhooks with it for reporting purposes. You can tie this into Slack for notifications. You also have customizability for overrides. So just like if you have vulnerabilities that get detected, open source package vulnerabilities, you want to add exceptions to that, you certainly can do that here. So if hey, acceptable risk, we want to go ahead and write an exception for that package, specific version, even down to a registry and repo there, or a tagged image. And then you can even set expiration dates. So maybe you want to let this go for right now, but now you're aware of it, but we're going to make the remediation, and then you can set that to expire. And then anything after that, if someone's doing that and pushing that type of image, that vulnerability in there to prevent that. So really cool stuff with customizability. Our APIs are fully documented. As you saw, I'm calling that in my Jenkins pipeline, but these two solutions are designed to work together, right? So pairing security as code and image-based scanning better together, peanut butter and jelly. So with that, I think I'm right at a couple minutes before time. I'll go ahead and pass it back over to Ron. And thank you very much for attending today, and hope you enjoy the rest of the speakers.